All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us in this live session. I'm at our offices in Kuala Lumpur right now in Mont Kiara, but it's just a couple of us here. The rest of the team is still working from home. Just last week, our company, Workana, turned 8 years old. 8 years of providing trusted on-demand talent to companies for their IT, design, sales, customer service, and even marketing projects. And 8 years of advocating remote work, if you believe that, and team efficiency. So now, with a COVID-19 sanitary and economic crisis, we are seeing more businesses in need of quick hires, avoiding downtime of their employees, right? And without a doubt, in need of people who know how to work remotely. So as part of our endeavors to support companies in this journey, we are doing these sessions in which industry leaders share their insights and plans on the best ways to tackle this new normal we are seeing, of which, of course, the gig economy is a major player. Because one thing is for sure, after all these months of worldwide lockdowns, companies and therefore work will never be the same. So today our guest is Shen. He's managing director of Lalamove. So let me add him to the broadcast. There you go. Hello, Shen.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, everybody.
So thank you very much for joining me in this conversation. These are strange times, and the times will only get stranger, right? These are unprecedented times. So can you please share a bit about yourself and about the company? Lalamove is a very well-known and established player, but to have some context, I think it's going to be great if you can share some of what the company does, a bit of a history.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit about myself. So I started. I mean, I've been in this line of work for some time now. I've been doing, well, some. It's all relative, right? Because this whole gig economy model has, I guess, only been really around for the past maybe 6 years, 5, 6 years, or 6, 7 years now. Since
Right.
the Uber days of gig economy. So before Lala Move, I was a Uber for about a year and a half. And then after Uber, I joined Lalamove, and I've been working here for about 2 years now. Lalamove itself is a company that is originally from Hong Kong. Yeah, so it's got a footprint all over Southeast Asia in multiple markets. We have been our biggest markets are probably Manila and Bangkok. And now we're growing very rapidly, of course, here in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur as well. We do on-demand delivery. Of course, we also do scheduled deliveries. Any form of last mile delivery that you can think of. Usually, we are able to provide that service. Everything from bikes to cars to vans, lorries, etc. So we try to provide the full spectrum of that service. We are expanding rapidly. We're looking to expand to more markets within Malaysia and now other countries very, very soon. So look out for that. But yeah, so we're just trying to grow the business as much as possible.
Right. So the company founded in Hong Kong and quite rapidly expanded throughout Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you are also operating in South America, right?
Yeah. So that's a very new market for us, South America. I believe we're in Brazil and Mexico right now. There are even plans. I believe we're now hiring to open up in the States as well in America. So I think the first market we're launching in America is Texas.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so we'll be
Interesting.
launching there. Yeah. So we're also in India. There are a lot of markets that are very, very new. So people don't really know we're quite there yet. And we're still growing those markets. So
Right.
yeah, we're not as big there, but the hope is to really grow in those markets as well, of course. But I mean, if we're talking about real growth, we're actually part of a larger company, Hualala, right? Which is actually our Chinese counterpart, right? And there we're the biggest. We do
Right.
millions and millions of orders, uh, every year. So it's always related, but we're just talking about Lalamove. Yes, it would just be the rest of the world, Southeast Asia, and now Latin America, America as well.
Right. Great. Yeah. Being myself being Latin American, I need to mention it. That's.
Of course.
Yeah. So, and how many employees does the company have globally?
Oh, that's a good question.
Uh,
I want to say it depends. If you include Hualala, probably in maybe 1,000-ish. If you include the China company as well. If it's just Lalamove, maybe I want to say maybe around 500 employees globally.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
don't
right.
quote
All
me
right.
on that. I could be slightly off, but something like that. Yeah.
That's okay. Just to have an idea. And
Yeah.
so now coming to Malaysia, which is
Mm.
your main area of concern, right?
Yes.
So how big is the team here in Malaysia?
So Malaysia, it's very interesting because like pre-lockdown or pre-MCO, as we do call it here in Malaysia, we had about 30-ish people. So a lot of people, were letting off people during the lockdown period, and we were doing the opposite. We were hiring, right? So we're about 55 now, I think. So we almost doubled or not doubled. We grew by about 50-ish%, 50-60% over the
Wow.
course of the lockdown period because we needed all that manpower to help with all the increases in demand.
And that's great. And that's precisely something I wanted to dive a bit deeper on. So Lalamove and your business is one of those few lines of business that were not negatively affected by
Yeah,
MCO, by the lockdown, but the other way around, right?
absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
and that called, so you need more manpower, as you said.
Hmm.
How was, however, I guess hiring and onboarding new employees
Mm.
was different than what you used to do before MCO.
Oh, absolutely. So it was very tricky. So because all logistics, not all, but most larger logistic companies were considered essential businesses during this period. Food delivery was also an essential business because people obviously couldn't go out to do their day to day. For us, because we're essential business, part of the office was allowed to work. Not everybody. So it was very need based people who were in the office. The operations team, parts of them were in the office. You would do A/B splits where half the team goes in one day, the other half goes the other day.
Mm,
So when we talk about recruitment, it was complicated. So basically, what we had to do was we had to stagger the recruitment process, right? So maybe we would have a couple new guys come in. They would teach them a few things at a time, and then they would have to go home, and then a couple of the other new guys would come in. They would teach them a few things at a time. They go home, and then they would have to work from home virtually, right? So
right.
they still couldn't be in the office. All the interviews were, of course, done virtually as well. Only when they had to do actual, more hands-on work, we needed. You do need someone there to guide you through the processes. It's some things are just a lot easier in person than online.
Definitely. So right. So your offices was one that was allowed to continue operating, but
Yeah,
still you
to a
needed to
certain extent. Yeah, yeah.
avoiding crowds, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You still got to do the social distancing, temperature checks. Everyone has to have a face mask on, hand sanitizer, everything.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Was so back in going back in time a little bit in March, right? When
yeah.
when the COVID got worse, so lockdown started throughout the world, and Malaysia was no exception. What
Mm.
was like your first reaction? Because it was kind of over the course of just one weekend, right, in which that everything started changing quick.
Yeah, it was it was very strange, I guess. Our reaction, it was honestly just mostly confusion, right?
All right,
For the first week, because you don't know what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. Do you need a permit to keep operating? Am I an essential business? I don't know. I mean, I'm a sort of a different type of business, not traditional deliveries like, your post or DHL and things like that. It's quite, it's sort of new economy. So it was a lot of just figuring out, talking to governments, and understanding what we could do, what we could not do, but also trying to anticipate the growth in demand, right? Which was impossible to anticipate. I mean, you're growing, let's say 10-15% month on month, right? As a new business, that's not too, I mean, obviously that sounds like a lot, but as a new business, it's expected, 10-15% month on month. And then all of a sudden you grow 100%, in a week, right?
Yeah,
In
that's
terms
crazy.
of, yeah, which is insane, right? So when you look at these numbers, you're like, can I support this level of demand, right? And so there was a lot of there was a bit of panic in operations. Customer support got swamped. So one of the key hiring things that we needed to do was to grow our customer support team, right? Our customer experience team, right? Because there were just so many calls coming in. Why can't I get a driver? This and that, and a lot of it was just simply to do with, it was just a huge influx of demand that comes in over a very short period of time, right? And because you are a so-called on-demand company, right, where people want things delivered immediately, there is that expectation, that it's not the same when you send a letter or you send a parcel to your friend, right, that they will get it when they get it, So usually it's like, okay, maybe 3 days, maybe 5 days, Now you order DHL, they tell you it'll take about a week. Usually it takes about three days if you're using DHL Express,
Yeah, they're swamped.
Yeah, they're swamped. Yeah, and there are much fewer flights coming in and out, right? But the expectation is set, right, that it will take more than a couple of days to get your parcel. Whereas with us, the expectation is I got to get this out now, right? Usually it's food or some perishable item, that needs to be, or something that's super important that people need to get delivered. And if they're not delivered in that amount of time, people get very upset, which is understandable, of course, right? But I think the expectation management was probably one of the more difficult parts. Controlling for increases demand was also quite difficult. So, we had to, shift people from one department to another department to help to support and stuff like that. It was actually quite crazy for a period of time.
Seems like you've been pulling it off, the quick hiring.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, we do our best in terms of trying to make sure that we are not trying to get to the root of the problem. Because one of the issues that we also had was that it doesn't matter how many support people you have on. If you have no drivers, you have no drivers, right? I mean,
Right. That's
you're just
still...
you're just putting a band-aid on a problem, but you're not actually fixing the problem, right? So what we had to do is one of the things that did happen during this lockdown period was, even though demand shot up quite significantly, the people who registered to be riders and drivers with Lalamove also shot up significantly, because people now have no jobs, So now people need to find a new way to make an income, and so we got this huge influx of people coming onto the platform to work with us. And so, but the problem is there's a manpower issue as well, because you have to do training, you have to verify their account and all that. So all that process also takes a lot of time. So the more people you have coming in, the longer it takes to, go through the list, right? So it was a function of, okay, we're hiring all these support people, but we also need people the operational people, to make sure that we can get all these guys through the funnel. And that took about at least a week or two. Because the first week when demand increased, I think it was like 50-60%, you're like, okay, we can still do this, We can support an increase of 50-60%. We have the manpower, we have the supply. Because usually you try to be oversupplied. There is a buffer you put in place. So even if there's a spike, you can support the spike. But when you jump 100%, 150%, 200%, that's when you got real problems, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, real problems. You know what I mean. You're still growing,
of
right?
course, of course.
But you want everyone who is on your platform to have a good experience. You don't want people to not be able to get a rider. So even though, yes, from a growth perspective, you look at the numbers like, oh yeah, look at that line go up, right? But the people who are using your platform aren't having the experience, and that is almost more important than just the growth, right? So
Definitely.
yeah, so we had to find ways to solve around that, and it did take us about 2 to 3 weeks to really clamp down on that issue, and I think now post lockdown, or not really post lockdown, almost post lockdown, I guess you could say it is in Malaysia.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. Um, now we're oversupplied. Now demand is sort of not. I mean, definitely not back to where we were. Now it's just gone down a little bit.
Right.
But now we are very very well supplied. Fulfillment rates are at all time high. You need a driver to for anything you get one like that. So I think there are pros and cons to all this, but at the end of the day, you just gotta sort of work with what you have and then try to make the right decision at the time.
Definitely. And even so, I mean, taking, as you mentioned, 2 or 3 weeks to sort those things out with the onboarding and whatnot. Just 2 or 3 weeks, it's still quite quick by any industry standard. I think that's one of the advantages of already being in a mindset of on-demand talent and
Yeah.
and quick scaling, right? And that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
many other bigger and or more traditional companies struggle with. They have
Yep.
not only bureaucracy, right, but just the mindset.
Mm.
They say, okay, hiring someone takes 2 months, so there's no way
Yeah.
I'm doing this in 2 or 3 weeks. But
Yeah.
then companies such as yours prove that it is possible. So I think that's quite interesting.
No, absolutely. I think there's a problem with larger, for example, when I told my guys to scale up customer support, I told them, you have 3 days to get me 3 candidates. If you don't give me 3 candidates, we're going to have a conversation, right? So literally, because you need to get 3 candidates, who you shortlist, and then you have to interview and this and that. So it takes about, if you're lucky, it'll take about a week, right?
If you're lucky,
and so that's
yeah.
if you're lucky, it'll take about a week, right? And that is at the fastest you can go, right? Because you need to train them, this and that, right? So I don't have time for you to take your time, basically, right? And the infrastructure we have set in place is quite is very agile, right? So the decision making process is literally, I say something and then it happens, right? So there isn't too many checks and balances along the way. And don't get me
All right.
wrong, I can make mistakes, obviously, right? And
No,
I have
sure,
made
but there's
in the
no
past as well.
bureaucracy.
Exactly, right? So HR, we have one girl, you know what I mean, who handles everything, and she's excellent at her job, and so we are able to scale much quicker than traditional companies do because of the infrastructure they have set in place and these policies that are set in place and all these sorts of things. When you are a young sort of startup company that doesn't have as many of these sort of quote unquote guidelines put in place, there are risks, obviously, to that. I mean, the very point of policy and guidelines is to protect the company and to protect certain decisions from being made from like bad actors who try to abuse the system, but also it slows down the process a lot, right? So as a younger company with less sort of guidelines in place for certain things, right, like hiring and things like that, it makes that process a lot faster.
Right, and that's great. I think, and even as you were saying, with same day delivery, and that's what's expected of Lalamove. Whereas with traditional mail or other companies, you say, okay, 3 to 5 days is the normal. With Lalamove, today is right now is the normal, right?
Yeah.
But I think raising those standards, and we are seeing the same in terms of, just as you were saying, with hiring, right? And when someone tells us, wow, there's no way I can get a customer service team in just a week or two, and we tell them, oh, it is possible, right? I mean, we do that with other companies. We supply customer service teams, marketing teams, and we provide access to great verified talent in under a week for most positions.
Yeah.
Because nowadays there are so many, it's technology enabled tools and processes and methods that make that possible. So it's a shift in paradigm on how you can get things done, basically at
Absolutely.
all levels, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Great. So, for example, I was wondering, the buy for you service you guys have. I'm guessing. Well, first, if you can briefly describe it for anyone who doesn't know what that is, but also I'm guessing that grew a lot over this period.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Buy for You is basically our purchasing service, right? So if you need something bought for you, right? And you don't want to go out and get it yourself, you can pay a little bit extra on top of the fare, and one of our riders and drivers will go and get it for you, wherever it is, as long as it's not above a certain price point, right? So we do limit the amount that they can buy for you, because you need the cash on hand. In terms of how much did it grow during the MCO period, it grew an incredible amount. I mean, typically Buy For You isn't the most popular service that we offer. It's more because I don't think that here, at least in Malaysia, we have a huge culture of getting people to go out and buy things for them. We do maybe a few hundred orders a day of Buy For You, but it's not a super high number. But of course, during the lockdown period, this skyrocketed to multiple times that. But I will say that the real problem with Buy For You is, so the number one thing people want you to buy for them is either food or groceries.
Groceries,
yeah?
right?
Yeah. Groceries, and that makes the most sense because you don't want to go out and so but then there is this whole trade-off for the rider, right, or the person doing the service, right? Because Buy For You, once again, the cost of a Buy For You service is not a lot. It's like 4 ringgit or something like that, which is quite negligible if you're buying a lot of stuff, right? So what ends up happening is that users write a long list of things that they want, and then the rider will look at that list, that's going to take me like an hour to get all those things that you want. Typically Buy For You is supposed to be used for quick little items that you want to just get someone to go run down and do a quick errand and buy something for you and then bring it to your place, right? So that was the one issue, right? But the other issue, and the more, I guess, much larger issue that made Buy For You difficult during the lockdown was the lines, right? So every time you go to a grocery store, it doesn't matter if you're a rider or a driver with Lalamove or any other company, you have to wait. Right, so
to even get into the supermarket, for example.
To even get into the supermarket, right? So sometimes that could take you half an hour, 45 minutes. You know what I mean? And that is a lot of time, so-called quote unquote wasted, when you could be doing jobs, other quicker orders, right? So although yes, the demand for Buy For You definitely increased, the fulfillment for Buy For You was very difficult. Simply because it's not really an appealing service to do during a period like this, because it was just Buy For You always can be very complicated, and also the waiting times to get into these grocery stores can be very, very long, and it just wasn't an efficient way for them to spend their time.
I see. And that's, well, as we were saying at the beginning, that's how unprecedented this situation is, right? How come I have to get in a line to get into the supermarket? They check my temperature, give me gloves. That never happened before. And all of a sudden, we are needing to, and that, as you're saying, has a direct impact on different kinds of businesses, and Buy For You is just one of them. I think it's a great example of how these all new SOPs and the new measures and restrictions have ripple effects that we wouldn't have imagined not that long ago, right? That's interesting. All right, so now moving forward and trying to imagine a bit about the future and how this new normal, right, is shaping up. How do you expect your day-to-day activities? So right now and over the past couple of months, your day-to-day activities changed dramatically, right? You mentioned it yourself, just having a portion of the team coming to the office, conducting interviews remotely, for example. So many things changed. But, looking like for next year, 2021, how do you think your day-to-day activities are going to be different than what they used to be in 2019?
Well, I think one of the key differences is that one of the things that this lockdown has sort of shown a lot of businesses is that the capability for certain teams to work from home is very, very apparent, right? So a lot of teams don't need to physically be in the office to get the job done, right? So a good example would be customer support, right? Our office is a certain size, so if you scale too much in terms of manpower too quickly, which we did, because we had a projection obviously of how many manpower we were going to have and how long that would take throughout the year, and so we had planned for that. But once this lockdown happened, we had to scale our manpower so much that we couldn't fit people in the office anymore, right?
Right.
And yeah, but I mean, so it's a very interesting problem to have because now you have all this staff and nowhere to put them, right? So what ends up happening is a lot of them work from home, and it turned out that it didn't really make a difference to the quality of their work,
That's
right? People
amazing.
still, yeah, so people still did the work. People still came online on time when they needed to be online, and all these sorts of things. So certain, don't get me wrong, certain functions are non-negotiable, right? Operations has to be on ground, right? Sales teams or business development teams have maybe 50-50 depending, some of them need to go see clients and this and that, right? So a lot of these roles you need to have them in the office, right? But a lot of them, the ones that have less sort of management type roles, you can have them work from home. So I think that's going to be one of the bigger changes that's going to happen over the course of or into the future, basically, because most things can be done via con call if and as long as your role doesn't require you to be in office, a lot of people are going to start. I think smarter companies at least should start thinking about letting your employees work from home. So, I mean, you save on a lot of things as well. There are a lot of savings involved, just in terms of the office space, etc. Right? And I do. The only downside to that would be whether or not the employees feel like they're part of the company. I do feel like there's some negatives in terms of about how they build relationships with other employees and things like that when you can't meet them day to day. And so maybe there are ways that you can mitigate that. Have outings or have them come into the office in rotational sort of things, maybe once a week, so that they at least meet their team, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so the work from home part is probably the biggest thing that's going to happen, I think.
I think you've touched on a few very valuable insights here. So you mentioned that in your experience, you didn't see a decline in quality of work when working from home, and I think that's something that many companies are experiencing, and that starts to debunk the myth that if people are working from home, they'll be not working, basically, right? Watching
Yeah,
Netflix
exactly.
or whatnot. And this, while a terrible crisis, of course, it is disproving many of those myths, and I think that's a good thing. And that brings about, as you mentioned, for example, savings. And you said it yourself, all of a sudden all your staff no longer fit in the office, so you have like two options. We either keep on having people working from home, which is what you are choosing to do, or you need to get a bigger office. And in a big city like KL, or or Hong Kong or Singapore, or many other big cities, that's expensive. I mean,
Yeah,
real estate and
absolutely.
the square feet are expensive. So being able to being in the mindset in which you do not need to incur those expenses, I think that's a good thing. And but also another thing you mentioned, and I agree, is that there's a culture challenge, right? People,
Yep,
because when you come to an office, you are physically sharing a space, going out for lunch. Hey, anybody want coffee? Small talk and whatnot. And if you're working
exactly.
remotely, you don't have that. So there's a huge uh, challenge. And there are many, as you were saying, like outings or digital online activities. There are many things in which you can tackle that,
Yeah.
but it needs address to be addressed, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, not many things can replace actual, human contact.
of
It's
course,
very difficult to replicate. I mean, even if you're playing, I don't know, online games together, it's not the same as actually going out and I mean, for me personally, it's not the same as going out and actually getting a coffee with someone and having
of
a
course,
conversation. Yeah. So I do think it does make a difference, but you just have to find a way to sort of figure out what the balance is. And I don't think anyone really knows what the formula is at the moment. But it'd be a very interesting experiment to run for the short term and the medium term as well.
yeah, definitely. Have you yourself started working with any new tools you had not been using before?
Well, mostly, I mean, we're quite a technology first company in general, right? So
Right.
everyone was like, okay, we're all on Zoom now. I mean, we've always been on Zoom, right? We're
Right.
all on, yeah. We all use these different channels and tools. Or we kind of already did most of that already. The only one thing that we did do was that because we couldn't do physical training for our drivers, because obviously, I mean, sometimes we have like 50 to 100 drivers come for training at a time, which is a large crowd. Um, we had to do all these things online, right? So Lalamove actually has two ways you can start coming online with us. One of them is you can do a virtual training and then there's a test. But if you fail the test, you have to go for you used to have to come in for in-person training, right? But because you can't do that anymore, we started giving online sessions, right? So there'll be a person there on the computer, like now, like both of us now, and then all the drivers have to sign in and sort of go through that training slides and process and ask questions with the trainer, right? The difficulty here was because a lot of our riders and drivers are of let's call it the older generation, right? So they're not so
Okay.
tech savvy, right?
Yeah.
So it became a bit of a problem. So the smartphone is not really an issue. Everyone has a smartphone today. I mean, no one has. I mean, if you don't have a smartphone, you can't even work with Lalamove anyway, right? So that wasn't really the problem.
You're kind of an outcast in a
Yeah, you're
sense.
kind of exactly right. So, but the difficulty here was going, okay, what is the simplest tool that you can use that can broadcast your message to a wide audience? Because Zoom is simple, but not so simple. You know what I mean?
I agree.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, there is an app you have to download, and even that. So we wanted the most frictionless tool that you can get. So we found one, and so we use that now. I think it's called whereby, I don't know, something like that, right? And so where
Uh-huh.
you don't need to download an app, you just click the link and it uses your browser, and then you can just join the conversation, right? So doing that research and so that's probably the main tool, and it keeps up to, I think, 50 people in the room, right? Which is a good size, right?
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with Hangouts, I believe, is that Hangouts is limited to, I can't remember what the number was, like 30 if you get the free version or something like that.
They recently opened it up,
A
but
little
it
bit
was
more,
quite recent. Yeah.
so doing that research, we just thought that this would probably be a better way to do it. But yeah, so that's probably the only tool that we employ.
The new one. So
The new one, yeah.
video conferencing tool basically.
Yep.
Right, and that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So again, looking into the future, but now thinking about other companies, because you've already been through this change out of needing to hire right now. But do you think how companies hire people in general will change, like in 2021?
Do I think how people hire people will change? I think that's a bit of a tough question because so much is changing, so much can change from now until that time. That is it's quite difficult. I think KL or Malaysia in general typically is quite slow to adopt real like innovative change,
Hmm.
right? So I do feel like most companies will probably fall back to traditional methods of pre lockdown sort of practices. I don't expect too many companies to have huge changes in the way that they hire and things like that. The one thing that maybe they would start doing more though is maybe they would not hire as many full-time staff and hire more contract staff to mitigate risk,
Right.
right? Just because when things like this happen, you don't want to have to pay severance and this and that. All not good for the employee, obviously. I mean, not gonna lie. But I do expect that if you're a cost conscious company, and as we know now, the job market's not great, so a lot of the job seekers today are quite desperate to get roles. You might end up taking a role that is not 100% to your benefit.
A fit.
Or yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think so I definitely agree that companies, and it was right what I wanted to tackle on next,
Mm,
because this COVID is not only a sanitary crisis, right? It
yeah.
provoked or is provoking an economic crisis
Yeah.
throughout the world.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, I totally agree that companies are going to be far more risk averse than what they used to be. And while at first sight that might look like creating opportunities in a weird way, I think it also creates opportunities in new mindsets and new ways in which companies hire and people get hired. Because all of a sudden, if you have a big, for example, right, if you have a big company, let's say here in KL, and because they are more risk averse than they used to be, they say, okay, I don't want to hire full-timers to do this. I want to rely on on-demand talent.
Yeah.
And that's something right up our alley, of course.
Yep.
That also creates opportunities for people living outside of KL. And all of a sudden, someone in Cheratin, for example, can get a job for that company. And while, yes, they might not be formally an employee of the company, they can still make an income without having to move to KL, which can be cumbersome or expensive. I think, it's just an example, but it's the kind of things that while a few doors seem like are closing, many other doors are all of a sudden open, and that's creates opportunities.
I completely agree with that point. I do feel like for the employee, it probably gives you, for if you're doing freelance and you like that kind of work, then definitely, I do believe the freelancing population and the gig economy population are going to see. Well, first of all, they're going to see a bit more competition as well. There's a lot more people come into that space, but also they're going to see more companies willing to want to work with you, because to mitigate that risk of hiring a full-time employee. Also because if you hire someone on freelance, if that person is not up to your standard, you can always move to the next person on freelance, right? Which is the same with us here now, right? I mean, if you don't like a particular delivery person, we'll get you another delivery person, because that's kind of model that we run. So yeah, I completely agree with you that it does provide unique sort of costs and benefits in this new sort of new normal economy.
The new normal, right.
Yeah.
Have you when dealing with some of your bigger clients or potential clients, have you experienced firsthand this kind of change in mindset?
Yes, absolutely. We have quite a few big clients. I can't say who, but who have, especially when we look at the larger vehicle fleets, right? So like I said, Lalamove covers everything from bike, car to vans and lorries, etc. Right? So the cost to maintain and hire people for your larger vehicle fleet can be quite high, right? And the capacity is relatively limited to how many vehicles you have and this and that, right? So when demand spikes, you're not able to accommodate the spike in demand because you're limited by your supply. You can't scale, right? So what they end up doing is they end up, one of two things, right? So they either offload their existing fleet and then they come work with us, right? Because they don't longer have to worry about the maintenance and this and that, and we are very, very competitively priced. Or they use any excess demand that they have, then they offload that to us. Right. So there is definitely a change in the way that you are no longer so as limited as you would be had you done it, had you only remained with your traditional method of operations.
Right. I think that's a crucial aspect, not being limited. On demand, the gig economy and being able to tap into a pool of on-demand resources, which is in different areas, but is what both our companies do, right?
Yeah.
I think that's crucial because just as a big company, as you mentioned, is no longer tied to their fleet for their last mile deliveries, their logistics. We are seeing the same when it comes to marketing teams or customer service teams. All of a sudden, a Hari Raya or Christmas or whatever season is coming and they need more sales manpower or marketing manpower. They can quickly scale up for just 1 month and then scale back. And the same goes with your drivers and deliveries. And I think that allows for tying costs far more tightly to results. And that's definitely a great opportunity for companies of all sizes.
Yep.
Of all sizes. Right. Okay. All right. Great conversation. Hey, yeah, definitely. So we have a few comments and questions here.
Sure.
let's take a look. A couple of these are quite interesting. So I'm sure the answer is yes, but I'll let you elaborate. So someone here is asking if they can hire Lalamove more at the corporate level to handle all the deliveries really quick.
Yes, the answer is yes. But once again, there are quite a few things that we need to understand about your company before I can give you a more, I guess, holistic answer. Because when you say, when you want us to handle all your deliveries, do you mean that you are going to give us a daily Excel sheet with all the drops, and then we will get someone to assign them for you? Or do you mean APIing with us through a platform, that you also have, and then we handle the delivery portion of your orders? It really depends on what kind of business you do, and
Right.
so those sorts of questions we need to have a conversation on. But by and large, absolutely. I mean, if you have a logistics problem, we are here to provide the logistics solution.
All right. Okay. Great. Interesting. Another one for the both of us. When hiring someone through your platforms, how do I know I can trust the person?
When hiring someone through our platforms, how do you know you can trust the person? Okay, so I guess for me, it would be, first of all, I have to kind of understand what you mean. What do you mean by trust? Trust them to perform the delivery, or trust them to.
I guess I just read the question
Yeah,
as is,
yeah,
but
no,
yeah.
exactly, right. So it's a bit of a complicated question, because I think that should apply for almost anything that you do, right? When you go to Starbucks, something, you trust that person to make you a good the coffee normally. You know what I mean? So it's a bit of a difficult question to answer, because that applies to like everything we do in life. I mean, I do believe that in society, the very I'll give you an example, right? When people first started using Uber, a lot of people were saying that why would I get into someone's car that I've never met
Right.
before, right? That doesn't make any sense. How can I trust this person to send me to where I need to go? Um, and because before this, apparently taxis were safer or more trustworthy. I don't know why. You know what I mean? So a lot of it is due to, I think, intrinsic mindsets of a certain individual. Now, don't get me wrong, like, in every sort of business, in every sort of, even the gig economy, or the traditional economy businesses, there will be bad actors, right? So people who, mess up, or steal things, or get into accidents, and so these things do happen, But by and large, I believe, if you believe society in general is good, and not out there to excuse my, like, my language, screw you, right?
Right.
Then I don't think you should have that sort of worry. I mean, if you look at our current, let's call it, failure rate in Lalamove, it's like less than 1%, right, of an order not being delivered properly, right?
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a
So
great stat there.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, so when you talk about trust, I believe that as long as you can apply that question to literally anything, right? And so I would say that the first thing that you have to do is you have to try the platform, right? If you have a bad experience, then a couple of things. You could either let us know, and we'll try do our very best to solve it for you, right? If you experience a problem, or number two, you can stop using the platform, right? And that applies to everything.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gig economy, right? So I do think that what you should do is you should try it, and then you should make your own conclusion from there.
I agree, and I think there's a huge valid point you're making, which is that applies to everything. Why would you submit gig workers to a different standard than anything
Yeah,
else, right?
exactly.
But that being said, also, I understand you guys do the same. We also have, well, you mentioned it yourself. You do these trainings, right? So it's not that someone completely unknown is all of a sudden delivering stuff. I mean, they do have to sign up, go through a training, and we do the same with our freelancers. And then you have the 5 stars and reviews from previous people who hired them,
Yeah,
and all of that, doing this through a platform like Lalamove or Workana, what we provide, right, is a framework for doing this safely.
yeah,
So I agree. The standards are kind of the same as just when getting coffee at some coffee place, but also there are many tools we provide to raise or ensure some level of quality. And
Absolutely.
I think, having, as you mentioned, less than 1% rate of deliveries with problems, we have a similar a similar rate of problems in our projects, and I think that's a great example of how it works. Yes, there are some outlier cases in which it doesn't work, just as with anything else. Your coffee can be cold, I mean, but for the most part it works. And
Exactly.
giving it a try is not a commitment of thousands of ringgit or whatever. You can give it a
Exactly.
try with a
Yeah.
smaller thing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and there are safeguards getting put in place, right? So, for example, like we have insurance that you can buy on the platform as well. So, if you're worried, for example, that I'm delivering a laptop which cost me 4,000 ringgit or whatever, you can buy insurance for it, right? And then we will protect you if anything would happen to that to your item, you know.
right.
So yeah, so I mean, we do our best to implement as many safeguards as possible. You know, I mean, when there is a bad incident that does happen, like one in every, I think it's like 50,000, 100,000 or something like that, you know, we will do our level best to make sure it's resolved. You know, what if you would like to make a report or anything, we will give you all the information that you need, you know, and this and that. So we do try on our end, at least our very best, to make sure that, you know, your problem is resolved as well, right? So it's a two-sided sort of thing.
Definitely, and that's precisely the kinds of things I meant when providing a framework, a safety framework,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah,
not hiring someone directly to deliver your things or to develop your app in our case, but
yeah,
rather you're doing it within a framework, and that allows us, Lalamove Workana, to provide assurances, and that's
yeah,
definitely a great thing.
exactly.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So thank you very much for your time. As a wrap up, is there what do you think are some key factors? You've already mentioned a ton, so maybe, just as a summary, what would you say some are key factors an industry leader such as yourself would need to consider when looking into the future, looking into the next 6 months and 2021, and when operating in this new normal? What are some of 2 or 3 key factors you think should definitely need to be considered?
Um, okay, just give me a sec. Key factors that should be considered. Okay, so but just a little bit more context. Key factors in terms of
You
growth, in terms of like
In
anything.
terms of growth, it's a great theme,
Right.
definitely, and also in terms of, and again, you've already mentioned it, in terms of, for example, efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think. All right. So the one thing that I would say is that okay, I only have one key thing that I would say, right, that I think
Okay.
if you have the capability to do it, you should do it now, right? I think we are in a very interesting period in our economy globally, but also locally, of course, that there is a severe shortage in certain things and there's a severe surplus in other things, right? So there's a severe shortage of jobs, but a severe surplus in workers, a severe surplus in commercial property, you know, things like that, right? So if there was ever a time to renegotiate contracts, if there was ever a time to execute on expansion, if there was ever a time to, you know, looking into different sort of platforms that can help you save costs and explore those options, now would be the time, right? This thing literally comes around once in like 100 years or something like that, right? So if you want to recalibrate your business, do it now, right? Because it's not going to happen again. And if you don't take advantage of the situation, a lot of people look at the downsides of this, and there are 100,000 downsides to this crisis. Obviously, you know. Everything from your social life to your working life, you know what I mean? Everything was kind of put on hold, but also understand that there's a lot of opportunity in this as well. There are a lot of places now that are vacant, and so when we looked at expansion, we're like, okay, it's a great time to, you know, we're growing, so let's keep growing, right? To get a new office building, et cetera, right? So that would be my only key thing that I would if there's any advice you could give, that would be the only advice.
I love it. I love it. I agree. I think it's great piece of advice. Many people are still scared, to put it in a sense, but it's, as you're saying, this is the greatest of opportunities to recalibrate your business. Quoting you, basically. Yeah. Okay, great. Hey, this was great. Thank you very much for joining me in this session.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was great having your insights, and thank you everyone for joining. We have we had quite an audience here also commenting. So yes, thank you very much, and we'll keep in touch.
All right, have a good day, guys.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
And to everybody else, thank you for joining, and keep tuned. Stay tuned for more of these sessions. We already have a few more planned. Thank you very much.